welcome to the session today. We have a very good, outstanding resource person today. I request Mr. Walker Hanman to introduce. Before that, I just want to remind again that please don't scribble your sender names in the chat box. It is repeatedly told your attendance will be marked only in the end of the session by the SAI authorized person. So please don't scribble your name from where you are and all in the chat box. We will use it for questions. Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, please kindly introduce Mr. James.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I hope you got some rest after yesterday's sessions. It's with great pleasure for me to introduce Mr. James Siller today to our session. I've met James for the first time 2012 during a sprints conference in Europe. James is one of the very, very few persons who managed to be a world-class athlete. He was participating in the 400-meter hurdles in the Commonwealth Games, but who, after his athletics career, managed to become a very successful coach. He's been coaching athletes to World Championships, Olympic Games, in several events, mainly in the 110-meter hurdles, the 200-meter and the 400-meter. He was a hurdles coach, I think, for UK athletics for a couple of years, 6 or 7 years. I'm pretty sure he can elaborate a bit more on that afterwards. Yeah, right now he's working as the high performance head coach for the Reliance Training Center in Bhubaneswar, Odisha. And today he's going to talk about his experiences with hurdlers and hurdle drills and how to introduce hurdle sessions to younger athletes in India. And you're pretty much aware that being a hurdler, it's relatively easy to be successful, not only in India, but also in Asia. So personally, I feel that might be a field where we have a lot of potential in India. So listen carefully. And James, thanks a lot for having today's sessions. I'm very curious to listen to you. Thank you. And before starting, I know that our president also wants to say a few words. So Adile, you might give an introduction to James as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Volker. And welcome, James. I met James in Bhubaneswar for the first time. I had a nice long chat with him, and I found that he was very, very informative about everything that was happening. His thought processes were great. And I'm very pleased that James has agreed to take a session on hurdling and hurdle drills. Yeah, as Volker said, it is an event that we should really look at, both the 100 meters hurdles and the 400 meters hurdles, because both these events are events where we could potentially do well, because the overall standard of hurdling in the world, I'm not saying is not good, but what I'm saying is there is an opportunity there for us to get in there and get a foot in. So without going into further details, I will leave the experts to do their job. My only submission to everybody is please don't post things like good morning, Renu Kohli here. Renu Kohli, आप बहुत senior coach हो, आपको लिख के मैसेज भेजा जा रहा है कि आपका नाम ना लिखे. विजेंदर सिंह, आप बड़े सीनियर कोच हो, आप लोग ये करते रहोगे कि विजेंदर सिंह भोसला, रेणु कोच, चीफ कोच, NIS पटियाला, पता नहीं क्या, तो कैसे होगा? दिस इज ओनली, चैट इज ओनली फॉर क्वेश्चंस. इसमें कोई गुड मॉर्निंग नहीं होगा. आप जाने के टाइम आप जो करना है, जैसे सेशन खत्म होता है, क्योंकि इसके बाद क्वेश्चन पूरे मिस हो जाते हैं. 700 लोग गुड मॉर्निंग आपका नाम लिख रहे हो. If 700 people keep writing or 800 people keep writing good morning and write your names, then this session is for education. And we are going to miss your questions, because if everybody is going to keep saying good morning or so-and-so from so-and-so place, तो आप रोज हम विनती करते हैं आपसे कि, और जो मैं नाम में पढ़ रहा हूं चैट के ऊपर, बहुत सीनियर कोचेस हैं इसमें. There are a lot of very senior coaches who refuse to follow instructions. आपका एथलीट आपका इंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं फॉलो करे तो आप बड़े गुस्से हो जाते हो. If your athletes don't follow your instructions, you get very upset. Radha Krishna has been telling you every day, please don't post anything. Radha Krishna has been telling you every day, please don't scratch. Please don't try to save anything, because when you are trying to do that, when you touch your screen, it is causing scratch marks. आप 800 लोगों को डिस्टर्ब कर रहे हो, 900 लोगों को डिस्टर्ब कर रहे हो. By doing this, 800, 900 people are getting disturbed. So it is my request once again to you, please don't touch your screen, which is causing, don't try to save. This is available. This whole recording is available. Every day it is available. So please don't do this. I don't know which other language I should tell people. You all are all senior coaches. If senior coaches can't follow instructions, I don't know what we are going to do. So I think today's session is going to be an outstanding session. James is an excellent athlete turned coach. He's done a lot of coaching, a lot of education around the world, and I request Volker to take it back from here, and please continue. Good luck to you.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you very
James.
much. James, yes, ready, set, go. We're all very much looking forward to your presentation. Thanks again, and we will have a short question and answering after the session. So coaches, if any questions are coming up, please use the chat function to post these questions. And after James' presentation, we will find some time to discuss your questions. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you, Volker. Thank you, Adil, for the very nice introduction there. Good morning, everybody. I hope you are staying safe. This is the COVID-19 Coaches Club, I believe, that AFI have set up. It's a really fantastic initiative, and I'm really honoured to be part of it and talking to you this morning. I'm just kind of going to introduce myself and stuff, and I'm very lucky, really, that I had a reasonably good athletics career myself, competing internationally in the 400-meter hurdles. And when I retired from the sport, I took a little bit of a break and did some other things. And but during that time, my love for coaching always sort of shone through, and I started professionally coaching in 2009, working for UK Athletics, or British Athletics as it's known, publicly facing, as an apprentice coach. And during can you hear me okay? Whilst working in the UK, I just had a really good opportunity to work with great athletes. And as a coach, you are judged by the athletes that you coach. And I was really fortunate to work with some great athletes over the years. And in that time, winning lots of medals at national and international level. Highlights being in the top left here with an Olympic medal from Rio. Commonwealth Games medal here with Leon Reed, who was actually out in India training with me just after Christmas. Cameron Chalmers here, who's a flat 400-meter runner who came to me as a 48.5 runner, got him down to 45.5 in 2 years. David King here, who couldn't break 15 seconds for the 110 hurdles, went on to run 13.48. And Jack Green here, who has the misfortune of coming fourth twice in Olympic Games and fourth in the Commonwealth Games. So he's just hoping that someone above him might fail a drugs test and he might get a medal. But numerous other athletes that I've worked with as well. So I've been very, very fortunate to have worked with good athletes. Not only good athletes, but good mentors as well. And I would encourage you all as coaches to surround yourself with good people and good mentors. The gentleman in the top left here is a guy called Malcolm Arnold, who was my first mentor, really, a professional mentor, when I started professional coaching in 2009. We worked together with a number of very good athletes, mainly hurdlers in Bath in the southwest of England. And we had some really good success. 2011, Di Green won the World Championships in Daegu in the 400-meter hurdles and ran sub 48 seconds the following year in 2012. We had a great time together, and I learned a lot from Malcolm. He also coached famously John Akibua, who won the 1972 Montreal Olympics, famously from lane 1. So please don't complain when your athletes get lane 1. He broke the world record and won the Olympics from lane 1. So it's still 400 meters in length. And he also was the brains behind Colin Jackson, who is still the indoor world record holder for the 60-meter hurdles and was the world record holder for a number of years in the 110-meter hurdles. This guy in the middle here is a guy called Gary Winkler, who's a US coach. And I would encourage any of you that want to do any further reading to look up any publications that Gary has done. He's a really, really knowledgeable guy. And he really helped me with the technical side of hurdling and sprinting. And he was really the kind of the glue for the bricks, if you like, to hold my coaching wall together. A few years into my coaching, I wanted to really learn about acceleration. So I did some research and I found out about this guy, Coach Anderson from TCU, Texas Christian University in Texas in the USA. And I noted that he'd coached more sub 6.50 athletes in the 60 meters than any other coach in the world. And he'd also coached at the time, the current NCAA, which is the collegiate system in America, the current 60-meter champion. So I literally phoned him up and I said, Coach Anderson, I want to come and visit you. And I spent a week with Coach Anderson and I learned a lot about acceleration in the first 30 meters. And he really, really helped me in that side of things. And these two gentlemen here are my former coaches. So Tony Lewis, who unfortunately passed away in 2012, he was my coach from the age of 10 right through to 18. And I learned a lot from him, and particularly in enjoying athletics and being enthused about athletics. And the guy in the middle here, Chuda Bida, he coached me when I started to really make a breakthrough onto the international scene. And he really taught me about what it requires to be elite, and really gave me an introduction to elite athletics and the whole fanfare around elite athletics. So these 5 people have been a really strong influence on my life. And I encourage you all to get mentors from coaching and from maybe even other areas of the world. It's really, really, really important for your development.
Sorry, James. Before we go ahead, we have a request that you slow down a bit, mainly because I think our Hindi is not as good at the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
My
you.
Hindi is very, very poor. It's actually 0. So I will try and slow down. I do apologize. I will mainly focus on the male sprint hurdles today, but I will refer to female sprint hurdles and sometimes maybe 300 or 400 meter hurdles as well. Maybe if there's any questions on those events, you could type them into the chat box and I can answer those at the end. So what makes a good hurdler? Well, there's many things that make a good hurdler. Speed, coordination, good ankle strength, foot strength, someone that's aggressive, someone that's brave. But I think hurdlers come from very different backgrounds. So not all hurdlers have the same strengths. So I would encourage you all, when you're working with young athletes, for them all to hurdle, irrespective of what event they do, because some of the skills that you can learn from hurdling can be transferred into other events. For example, the takeoff is very similar to the long jump. The coordination and the timing is very important for events like triple jump, and maybe even into the throws and stuff as well. And it just gives your athletes a really good general movement vocabulary. Also, don't push your slower athletes into hurdles. We want the fastest athletes to be doing hurdles. I've seen a lot of athletes that are pushed into hurdles because they're not fast enough to be sprinters. So that is not correct. The fastest athletes need to be doing hurdles. Don't focus purely on the physical attributes at the young age. So don't necessarily focus on the biggest, strongest athlete, but also consider the athlete that is technically good, or the athlete that is very underdeveloped physically, that might grow to be strong, big and strong when they're older. And don't be limited by the constraints of the race. In India, for women, the 100-meter hurdles is done at under 20, under 18, and under 16. Some of the under 16 athletes struggle to get the 3-stride rhythm pattern in the race because they're not strong enough, not tall enough to handle the 3 strides. So our overall objective is to develop a fast 3-stride rhythm. So what we must do is not focus on the event at these young ages, but we must manipulate the distance between the hurdles to create a distance that is optimal for the athlete to learn and develop long term. That is what is really important. So it might be, if you have an under 16 athlete who you think will be a good hurdler, maybe they don't compete at under 16 hurdles. They just train over the hurdles with a shorter distance between the hurdles. And only when they are strong enough and deemed able to do a fast 3-stride rhythm, then they'll be allowed to compete. When you're working with young hurdlers, develop the 3-stride running rhythm before looking at the hurdle clearance. That is really important. I will talk about that a bit later. Be creative. I know that's been a theme of some of the other presentations over the course of the past couple of weeks. Don't be afraid to try new things. Rhythm, efficiency, and momentum must be considered to be a good hurdler. And this is something that is important, again, for all events. Big things fix small things. Focus on the big things first. Focus on the big things that will automatically fix the small things. Focus on the things that will make big technical changes that will help other things. I was challenged a few years ago. I went into a school with a group of young hurdlers, and none of whom had hurdled before, ever. And I told the teacher, I will get all these athletes, all these kids hurdling 3 strides in 15 minutes. And he didn't believe me, and he didn't think I could do it, but I did it. And it's very simple. And if you can see on this screen, you can see that the hurdles in each of these lanes, there's a different space between the hurdles, okay? I hope you can all see that. The gaps between the hurdles are different. And this is because the athletes are different. You have this girl here who's very tall, this boy very short, these two sort of in the middle. So the idea is you can set up 4 flights of hurdles, maybe 1 lane at 5 meters between the hurdles, maybe 1 lane at 5.5 meters, 1 lane at 6 meters, 1 lane at 6.5 meters. All of the athletes start on the first lane at 5 meters. If they can do 3 strides easily, or if it's 2 strides, because they're really good, you move them to the next lane. And the idea is we're not constrained by the parameters of the event. What we are doing is we're teaching the athletes to do a fast 3-stride rhythm. And in 15 minutes, I didn't mention anything about the hurdle clearance once. I didn't talk about the lead leg. the trail leg, the arms, I didn't talk about that. I wanted to develop the running rhythm. I wanted them to run 3 strides, and I wanted the kids to work it out themselves. That is how a child learns how to walk. My son is 11 months. He's just learned how to walk. I didn't teach him how to walk. He figured it out. He watched me, and then he had a go, and then he fell down and realized that hurt, so I mustn't do this, and tried again. And he got it. So it's very easy to get athletes, young athletes, hurdling with a 3-stride fast rhythm. See if you can do it with athletes in 15 minutes. Rhythm is very, very important. We'll share these slides. I don't need to read all this, but just look at the athlete here and just look at his rhythm. And the thing with rhythm is it's being consistent and consistently being able to do the same thing. So there's no difference. Every hurdle is the same. Let's just watch it one more time. So the key to rhythm is being able to consistently run in a fluent, measured, and uniform way. Now, rhythm is important in all of the athletic events, but it's really, really integral to hurdles. Now, when we talk about the 400-meter hurdles, rhythm becomes very important because you have to develop a stride pattern between the hurdles. In the sprint hurdles, every athlete does either 7 or 8 strides into the first hurdle and 3 strides between the hurdles. In the 400-meter hurdles, athletes will do a different number of strides between the hurdles. So they have to be in the stride pattern that is optimal for them. Efficiency, when I think of efficiency, it really is about energy. Energy is not unlimited. You don't have an infinite amount of energy. Therefore, when you do athletic events, when you hurdle, you have to be efficient. If you are inefficient, you will not be good at the end of a race because your energy will run out. Let's have a look at the athlete in the left versus the athlete on the right as we look at the screen, okay? So when they're about halfway, they're pretty much level. So let's just have a look at this. So halfway down that run, the 2 athletes were level. At the end of the run, the athlete on the right was 2 meters ahead. Why was he 2 meters ahead? Because he was more efficient and he had better rhythm than the athlete on the left. The athlete on the left, once he started getting fatigued, his rhythm regressed, his rhythm got worse, and he became less efficient. And therefore, he wasted his energy. He had no energy to be able to maintain his efficient rhythmical hurdling. Therefore, the athlete on the right was the athlete that came first on that run. And when you look at sprint hurdles, right at the international level, quite often the 3 athletes that get the gold, the silver, and the bronze are the 3 athletes that keep it clean, that don't hit hurdles, that maintain rhythm, that are efficient. It's the hurdlers that are pushing too hard, that are hitting hurdles, that often don't get a medal. So it's really important that when the athletes perform, they are efficient. In 400-meter hurdles, the last 3 hurdles are the most important hurdles in the race. Hurdles 8, hurdle 9, hurdle 10. If you have inefficient running or you're stuttering before the hurdles in the first 3 quarters of the race, then the last 3 hurdles will be slow. And when you are fatiguing, if you make a hash of one of the last hurdles, you will lose significant amounts of time because it costs more energy to get your momentum back. And the third big concept is momentum. So we now have rhythm, efficiency, and momentum. 3 really important terms that we need to consider when we're working with hurdlers. Now, watch this athlete. Now, the perception is that as this athlete runs, he looks like he's getting faster as he goes down the track because he's gaining momentum as he goes. So just watch the athlete and watch him gain momentum through this run. So I hope you all kind of noticed that. As he went down the run, he got lots of momentum. He was gaining speed. He was pushing off the hurdles really well. And that momentum is really, really important. So always when you're thinking of hurdling, think of rhythm, think of efficiency, and think of momentum. And these are terms that can be applied to other events also. So the sprint hurdles, a successful sprint hurdler combines high speed with accurate technical efficiency. So the last video that we saw, the athlete was moving very, very quickly. And if you see a top hurdler up close, you will appreciate just how quick they are moving. And the hurdling is a hurdle stride. It's not a jump. It's a hurdle stride, okay? So athletes do not jump the hurdle. So we mustn't use the term jump the hurdle. Please don't tell the athlete jump the hurdle. You never jump a hurdle. The hurdle is just a long stride, a long step. That is what it is. So that's really important. Please remember that. And the technical focus of every hurdle session should be on the takeoff, the fast 3-stride running rhythm, and the runoff. They're the 3 main things to focus on, not the hurdle clearance. Many coaches focus too much time on the hurdle clearance. They look at what the lead leg is doing, what the trail leg is doing, what the arms are doing, what the head is doing, and all these other things. The hurdle clearance is a product of good takeoff. If you take off correctly in the right position, the hurdling, the clearance will happen naturally. If you run off the hurdle in the right position, you land in the correct position, you run off the hurdle, you will set yourself up for a fast 3-stride running rhythm. 90% of your time should be spent on these 3 areas: takeoff, fast 3-stride running rhythm, runoff. Maybe only 10% of your time, maybe even less, is focusing on the hurdle clearance. And guiding philosophy. So don't worry if you don't understand these terms at the moment. I will explain. Reflexive power is something I will be talking about in the presentation today. It's a concept, the main concept I'm going to be focusing on today. And it deals with the takeoff. It deals with the takeoff. Positions and posture. I'm sure you've heard these terms being mentioned in the last few weeks. It's really important in all athletic events that you have good posture and you hit the correct positions. If you do that, the body will be in equilibrium and the body will do what it's allowed to do. So I will introduce these terms as we go through the presentation. There's some differences between male and female sprint hurdles. The main difference is the hurdle height. So for men, the hurdles are 57.1% on average of their height. And for females, it's under 50% of their height. So therefore, women must take off closer to the hurdle, and the men take off further away from the hurdle and land further away from the hurdle. Men also have to lean further forward to attack the hurdle. And speed underpins both events, as it underpins every event in athletics. Speed underpins every event, and there's arguably more of an emphasis on speed in the women's hurdles. So you see quite often female hurdlers are very good 100-meter runners and sprint hurdlers. The most famous two, Gail Devers, who won the Olympics in the 100 meters and the 100 hurdles, and Sally Pearson, who is one of the best sprint hurdlers ever, also is a very, very, very fast 100-meter athlete. In fact, in recent times, the males do seem to be getting faster, actually, and some of the top hurdlers now can run close to 10 and actually even under 10 seconds for the 100 meters. So speed is always important. So if I go back to the first slide that I showed you today, don't send the slow athletes to hurdles. We want the fast athletes doing hurdles. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but these are some of the qualities that you need to be developing throughout the whole year, the whole training year. I've broken the year into 3 parts: general preparation, specific preparation, and a competition phase. And then I've put all the qualities that need to be developed and how many times a week you would need to work on those qualities. Now, the number doesn't mean actual sessions. It just means units of work, okay? So please don't, in general preparation, do 1 speed session, 1 acceleration session, 2 sprint technique, 2 hurdle. It'll be too much, okay? But in the same session, you might do speed, sprint technique, and specific endurance, maybe in the same session, and 3 units of work in 1 training session. The 2 areas I'm going to really focus on in the presentation today are reactive strength and reflexive power. And that really focuses on the hurdle takeoff, which I believe is the most important thing to focus on when you're developing, when you're working with higher level hurdlers. With young hurdlers, the key is developing a 3-stride rhythm first, a fast 3-stride rhythm. Then you want to be working on the takeoff, and then you want to be working on the runoff. So you work it in that order. So this just shows how important speed is. These are times, flying 30 times. So a flying 30 is a maximal speed test. So you run for 30 meters to build up your speed, and then you time through electronic timing gates to get a very accurate time, the flying 30-meter time. And you can see here some of the times of some of the athletes. So Colin Jackson, his best time was 2.72. And he broke the world record at the time, 12.91. Andy Pozzi, who is the world indoor 60-meter champion, he has run 6.8. So he is even faster than Colin Jackson, yet he has run just 13.14, which is a very world-class time. But if all things being equal, he has better speed than Colin Jackson. So he should be able, or could, if he reaches his potential, run under this time of 12.91. The problem with Andy is he struggles to control the incredible power that he generates, and he has had lots of injuries, which have played a significant detrimental effect on his career. And we see here this young man who was in some of the earlier videos, Lawrence. He actually finished 4th at the Olympics in 2012 in the 110 hurdles. And he's relatively slow compared to these athletes, but technically very, very strong. A very good rhythmical hurdler. But if he could be faster, if he had a time like this or a time under 2.8, and that translated, then maybe he could run significantly faster over the hurdles. So acceleration. Most of the top hurdlers now are doing a 7-stride approach into the first hurdle. With your developing athletes, I would advise against 7 strides. It will be better to work with 8 strides. So let's just have a look at the different rhythms of these 2 starts. The 7-stride start . So you can see how the strides have to be very, very long and powerful and very accurate, because the athlete has to cover a big distance in only 7 strides. Now the 8-stride athlete, you will see the frequency will be significantly different. So now you can see that the athlete has a quicker cadence. My preference for developing athletes is an 8-stride approach. We talked about the importance of rhythm, and with an 8-stride approach, you have a fast cadence. And when you do 3-stride hurdling, you also have a fast cadence. So you are developing a rhythm that is similar to the rhythm you require in the race. With a 7-stride approach, it's a very long, slow, powerful rhythm. And many of the 7-stride hurdlers struggle to go from a slow, powerful rhythm to a quick rhythm from the start into the fast 3-stride rhythm. So my advice is with the younger athletes to work with an 8-stride rhythm, and only when they get to a level of very high standard would you then maybe consider, if you have a very tall athlete or a very powerful athlete, to go to 7 strides. Female athletes, very few female athletes do 7 strides, very few. Only the very tall girls, some heptathletes do 7 strides, but very few female hurdlers do 7 strides. Sprint technique is important for hurdling because hurdling is a sub-maximal event. What I mean by that is the maximum speed that you will get up to in a sprint hurdles event is significantly less than flat sprinting. Therefore, if you have good sprint technique, you will be able to run faster on the flat, and therefore you will develop more of a speed reserve for the hurdling. Flat sprinting is inuring. What inuring means is it means it's unpleasantly uncomfortable. So what you have to do with an athlete is expose them to high intensity activity at the right time. You have to expose the athlete to high intensity activity. Otherwise, they will not be able to develop their speed. Hurdle technique. Most of the hurdling technique is set up from a good takeoff. Once you take off, you want to attack the hurdle with the knee first. So you drive the knee at the hurdle first. Then the leg should be extended and the ankle and toe should be driven at the top of the hurdle or just over the top of the hurdle. The high point of hurdling, of the trajectory over the hurdle, should be just before the top of the hurdle, not directly above the hurdle and not directly past the hurdle. Why is that? The reason that the trajectory is before, the apex of the trajectory is before the hurdle, is to help the athlete get back down on the track as in a shorter distance as possible from the hurdle. And that allows the athletes to be back on the track and re-accelerating away from the hurdle. Shorter athletes need to lean more than taller athletes, certainly in the men's events. And this is because the shorter athletes have to raise their center of mass higher over the hurdles. If you look at the head of a top athlete, the head stays in line the whole way down the race. So when they're running 3 strides between the hurdle or whether they're going over the hurdle, the head should always be in line. Therefore, the shorter athletes have to lean more because they have to effectively raise their center of mass higher over the hurdle. And remember that the lead leg and the trail leg need to work together in equilibrium. An athlete should aim for a flat trajectory over the hurdle, as flat as possible. Remember, we don't jump the hurdle. We take the hurdle like a stride. So let's start considering the approach to the hurdle. So remember, we want to get the high point just before the start of the hurdle. How can we do that? Well, one thing you can do, this is a young athlete that I was working with. Whoops. And what we actually did, we actually put a piece of paper on the floor in front of the hurdle at the optimum takeoff for this athlete so that his high point was just in front of the hurdle. How do you work that out? The best way is to stand side on to the hurdle. You can film your athlete, get them to hurdle, get them to do the run into the first hurdle as normal. And if their high point is over the hurdle or ahead of the hurdle, then put the piece of paper further back from where they were taking off from. And then all you then do is you say to the athlete, take off on the piece of paper, okay? This athlete's actually a little bit behind the paper here. So he was actually too far away from the hurdle on this particular run. But it gives the athlete a visual focus, okay? So that's a good trick to help the athletes take off in the correct place. Get a piece of paper, put it on the floor where the athletes should be taking off, and get them to try and take off on the piece of paper. So now I want to talk about developing a powerful takeoff using reactive strength and reflexive power, okay? Now, please don't get confused with those terms. Reflexive power, the easiest way of describing it is this. You're walking down the street barefooted, and you put your foot down and you step on a pin on the floor or a nail, and it goes into your foot, and it's very, very painful. So what happens is you very quickly lift your leg up, take the nail out of your foot, and all of your focus is on the foot or the leg that has stood on the nail. What you don't realize is that the other leg, the opposite leg, has very, very powerfully driven into the ground. So it's very, very powerfully reversed or worked in opposition with the leg that has come up very quickly. So you can take the pin out of your foot. Because the thing with reflexes is they happen, it's a reflexive action that happens quicker than you can do yourself by thinking about it. So it happens as a product of something else. That's the key thing you have to think about. Okay, so remember, the foot where you step on the pin comes up and you think, oh, that really hurt. You try and take the pin out of your foot, but it's the other leg that drives down very, very powerfully. And that is how I want the penultimate step. The penultimate step is the step before the takeoff step. It's the same leg as your lead leg. So if your athlete leads with the right leg, the penultimate step will be the right leg. If your athlete leads with the left leg, the penultimate step will be the left leg. So think of stepping on the drawing pin like your penultimate step, and then think of the leg that drives down very powerfully into the floor as your takeoff leg. The goal of developing a powerful takeoff is to have a powerful takeoff stride. But our focus is not on the takeoff stride. Our focus is on the penultimate step, the reflexive action, the stepping on the pin, stepping on the nail. That is where our focus is. If we focus on the powerful takeoff step directly, it will not be reflexive, it will not be reactive, and it will be too slow. And what will happen is the athlete will probably take off very flat-footed and will jump the hurdle rather than taking the hurdle as a stride. Most of you will be now very confused, so I will explain this and show you this in a very simple way. So have a look at this athlete in slow motion, and this is just have a look at their takeoff. I'm just going to run the video through, then I'm going to slow it down and stop it at various points so you can see the positions I'm looking for. So he's a right leg takeoff. So there's the penultimate, right. Now there's the takeoff, left. And now he hurdles, okay? And just doing a start one. Okay, so let's look at some conditions. Let's look at the penultimate step. Okay, so this is the penultimate step. It's the right leg, the same leg that he leads over the hurdle with. This is the leg that I want you to focus on when you're developing a powerful takeoff. I want you to get the athletes to imagine that at this point they are stepping on a nail or a pin, okay? That's what I want you to focus on. Now, what you'll see here is the knees are together here, which is a really, really important position, not just in hurdling, but in sprinting also. I think maybe Volker referred to this in his sprint presentation as a key position in sprinting. So that is really, really important, that his foot actually isn't on the ground quite yet. Okay, so the knees are together. That's really, really, really important. Okay, so that's the powerful penultimate step. Now, let's take it forward a little bit now to the actual takeoff. So here's the takeoff, and guess what we see? We see their knees are together again. So if you remember back in the slide, the three guiding principles, number 2 was positions and posture. So if you get your athlete to hit the correct positions, lots of the little things will self-correct, will fix. Posture fixes more things than anything else I've ever come across in coaching. If you focus your time on posture, you will fix lots and lots and lots of other problems without even having to focus on them. And that is the key skills of good coaching, gentlemen, is trying to fix a problem by focusing on something else to cure the problem. Athletes do not like to be told what they can't do. They like to be told what they can do. They like to achieve, they like to improve, and they like to go away from the track feeling like they've achieved something. So if you see a problem, if you see an athlete doing something incorrectly, try and figure out why that is happening. What is that a product of? That's a really important skill in coaching. So my advice is, if you see something wrong, please don't address it immediately. Wait, think about it, maybe film it, and try and figure out why this particular thing is happening. And then when you can figure out why it's happening, then work on something else away from the issue to fix it. And quite often with athletes I've worked with, they have improved their hurdle clearance, their lead leg, their trail leg, their runoffs, without ever directly working on them. Because if you start thinking about every little thing going over a hurdle, or every little thing when you're trying to sprint, guess what? It becomes slow. It becomes mechanical. It's not natural. It's not reactive, and it's not reflexive. Okay? So this is a really good example here of an athlete that's hitting the correct positions, and therefore I don't need to see the hurdle clearance because he's in the right position here. I know that the clearance will be good. And this is an example of an athlete, very good young junior athlete. He got a bronze medal at the World Junior Championship. But he was unable to convert because he had learned very badly as a youngster. And here you can see he's just about, this is his penultimate step. And you can see the foot is out in front of the body. It's not under the hip. And there's a huge gap here. Huge gap. And because of that, he's having to spend far too long on the track. So this leg, the right leg, will spend far too long on the track because this leg has to get in the correct position. And the product of that is he then goes up. So he follows this yellow line where he should be following the 2 yellow lines. So his takeoff is poor and weak, and he jumps the hurdle because his penultimate step is poor. He is not developing the forces reflexively. He's developing the forces through his muscles, not through his tendons. That is why his takeoff is poor. So his positions are poor, therefore the takeoff is poor. So if I was working with this athlete, I wouldn't just say to him, you need to take off, you need to stop jumping the hurdle. That is bad coaching. I would look at him jumping the hurdle and I would say, why is that happening? And I go back one step and I look at this. And then I know the problem is here. So then I will try and fix this problem here. Unfortunately, I didn't coach him at this point. By the time I coached him, his head was completely fried and it was too late. We couldn't make the technical changes that we wanted, unfortunately. So it was too late. So it's important that these good habits are developed when the athlete is young, because it's very hard when the athlete is old to undo habits. And here we can see reflexive power with some mats. And this is something that if you can get these mats, this will teach the athletes the correct reflexive action, and you will have to explain nothing. So these mats, this first mat here is about 6 to 7 centimeters thick, and it's an old piece of track. This mat here is about 13 or 14 centimeters thick. It's 2 bits of track nailed to a piece of wood in the middle. And these are mats that I made myself. And these basically force the athlete to step down from above, like stepping on the nail. And when they hit the mat, it forces the other leg up very, very, very quickly. So you can see this athlete, he's stepping down from above, which is a very good action. He's getting ready here to do his penultimate step. Now he's doing his penultimate step, and look, the knee of the, what we call the free leg, so the leg that is not floor, is ahead of the leg that is in support, or the leg that is on the mat or on the track. So that is a fantastic penultimate position, absolutely fantastic. And then if you follow that through, look, at takeoff, his knees are together again, or very close to being together, and hardly any what we call amortization. So the leg is still pretty stiff here, and he then goes and clears the hurdle really well. Okay, so this is something you can do. One of the messages I've been hearing when I've listened to some of these presentations, be creative. So this is what I did. I figured out what the problem was, and I had to come up with a solution. So this is my solution to my problem. And the great thing with this is the athletes don't need to know what reflexive power is. They don't need to know what reactive strength is. You don't need to even mention those words. You just tell them you need to use these mats, and the body will figure it out by itself. This is an example in full speed. And watch the athlete. Watch how, did you see how quick the hurdle clearance was? Okay, it's only a low hurdle, but what the feedback that the athletes give me is when they do mat work, that the hurdle clearance time gets faster. Yet they're not working on the hurdle clearance. The hurdle clearance is a byproduct of a reactive penultimate step, a powerful takeoff, and a quicker clearance. So isn't that fantastic? We work on one thing and we get 2 other things fixed at the same time. And it's very, very, very simple. Anyone can do it. Watch again. Very quick takeoff. Now, here we have an athlete who has big problems with their takeoff. Watch how awkward this athlete is over the hurdle. They're not square going into the hurdle, and they're certainly not square coming off the hurdle. So watch. Can you see? He's falling away, particularly off the hurdle. I'll just show you one more time. Just watch him coming off the hurdle. Watch how he falls away. And he's falling away because of the penultimate step is not reactive and it's in the incorrect position. Remember, postures and positions. Now, we put the mats in, and I just said, right, just do the same again, but now with the mats. And look at the difference. So just by putting the mats there, he's now square coming off the hurdle. So look, let's look one more time. Look, this is before. And this is after. These videos were taken 1 week apart. 1 week apart. The only thing I said to fix all these things was take off on the mats. That's all I said. Guys, you have to keep things really simple. We can, as coaches, we can get into the real detail of these things and understand. But the athletes, you have to give them very simple messages. Everything has to be simple. And here is an example of an athlete using the mats. You can see the mats here. And we've added some extra hurdles in. And the idea here is that he's trying to replicate the feeling from the first hurdle into the second hurdle. Here you can see more athletes with the same sort of problem. So this is an athlete here. This is his penultimate step. Look, the knees are apart. Look, the knees are apart. It's a common problem that we see. So by doing the mat work, this would help this athlete significantly. And of course, we've already seen this athlete before. And look at the difference here between an athlete doing it correctly, stepping down from above, rather than reaching out. And the knee here is actually ahead. So the free knee is the head of the stance leg, and here it's not. So this is poor, good, poor, good. I hope that kind of makes sense. So I'm just going to run through now, just quickly to finish off, just some training ideas and some concepts for you to think about. These stiffness jumps are really good exercises to help reactive strength. So look how he's keeping the legs very, very straight. And for me, this is speed training in disguise. And this is the sort of training you can be doing in general preparation. It's safe and it's helping the athletes develop foot strength, ankle strength, and learning how to land on the track. This is a whip through exercise. You're just pulling the leg through and recovering the leg. The idea there is to race the legs, race the legs. So the leg that's coming down is trying to beat the leg going up. Notice good posture. And now you can make it even more complex. So Volker's talk yesterday, simple, basic, simple into complex. So the stiffness jumps will be simple, and this will be more complex. Look at the good posture, and look how quickly he's recovering the leg. And you might do 2 of those on each leg over about 10 meters in the warm-up. The runoff is obviously important as well, but the runoff is all a product of good takeoff. The main thing with the runoff is to push away from the hurdle. The body is designed to push, not to pull. So with the trail leg, get the athlete to try and push away from the hurdle with the trail leg. So pushing away from the hurdle. Some more training ideas. Hurdle rhythm runs. So these are sub-maximal runs, nice and comfortable, just with good rhythm, kind of 85 to 90% intensity, just nice rhythm, nice and controlled. Again, another rhythm, but this is a faster rhythm. So the hurdles have been brought in. It's a faster rhythm. So the hurdles have been brought in, 4 pigeon steps per hurdle there. So it's trying to force the athlete to do a faster rhythm. Now, if you wanted to do some hurdle clearance work, this is the way to do it with a 5-stride approach. So there the athlete is working on hurdle clearance. Another good way of developing takeoff strength is by doing 1 between hurdling. The gap between these hurdles is 14 steps between the hurdle, pigeon steps. That's a good exercise. I would only use that with higher development hurdlers. It's pretty intense on the body. And then once you get near the season, you need to try and do some specific preparation exercises. So you need to do some running with other athletes, if possible. So here we have runs as a group, not on your own. Again, another session here of athletes working together. So you're trying to create a competitiveness, and you're trying to create some pressure in training. Some of the male hurdlers, they struggle with the distance between the hurdles. So the middle stride has to be very short. So this is a nice exercise to work on the middle step by shuffling. So you can see that the knee doesn't come up very high. And overspeed. So once an athlete has good rhythm, then your job as a coach is to break that rhythm and try and build it back as a faster rhythm. So you can do 3-stride, 5-stride combination work. So the idea behind the 5-stride is that the athlete gets more velocity into their run, and the body then gets used to taking the hurdle at a faster speed, and the body gets used to it. This is another example of overspeed, but now with a 3-stride, 7-stride approach. So you get even more speed. So the athlete did some 3-stride hurdling, 2 7-strides, then back to 3 strides. Another way of doing overspeed is with very low hurdles. These are 85 centimeter hurdles, 12 hurdles. So another way of developing a fast 3-stride rhythm. Just some other things very quickly, just to finish off. You can do isolation drills. So you can just work on the lead leg. Or you can just work on the trail leg. I'll share this with you at the end, but I put this together just to give you an idea of the objective, the exercise you can use, and then a description of the exercises. So I won't go through that now, but perhaps you can look through that. And then if you have any questions, perhaps you can direct those to Volker, and I can try and answer them, or maybe even do a follow-up session on some of these things. This is a really good quote that I really like, and it's a bit of a guiding light for me. The development of general and sport-specific fitness is a process that is experienced by the athlete's entire personality, and that must be mastered. So an athlete is an athlete 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Whether they are training on the track, whether they are resting, they are always an athlete. And their mind and body needs to be focused on that. Thank you very much for listening. I'm sorry if I was talking too fast. I hope you understood most of it. For me, every presentation I listen to, I try and get one main point out of it. I've covered a lot of material there in just over an hour. I would try and take away the takeoff as being really important, and I would try and take away the concept of the reflexive power as my main takeaway. Okay, Volker, do we want to open up to some questions? Or?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was a really great insight into performance hurdling. We had a couple of problems with videos. So I hope that the sprinters in Odisha are faster than the internet.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions actually. Personally, I really like the points you mentioned out, especially, and that's something we have to always keep in mind, that we have to keep corrections positive, and that does not only apply to the hurdles, but to all events. Yeah, we need to, I think, focus more on solutions rather than the mistakes. And as coaches, I think another thing we have to constantly remind ourselves is that we don't overcorrect the athlete, and especially by developing the hurdles, when we're looking for individual movement patterns, I think that's of utmost importance. James, we had a couple of questions. The first one, what do you think is the right age to start hurdling?
I think you should be hurdling from a very, very young age, not necessarily racing. I know you guys here, you don't start hurdling till under 16, I believe. I think really as soon as you can get an athlete onto a track, I would get them hurdling, because it doesn't need to be event specific. So if you go back to the photos of the young athletes that I was working with. I think they were aged between 10 and 14, I think. And the key skills of hurdling, remember, are coordination, timing, learning how to take off, learning how to absorb force, land, etc., etc. So I would say, yeah, from a very young age is fine, but obviously it might not look like hurdling like some of the videos and photos that I've shown you today. It might be over very low hurdles. It might be over barriers, cones or something, rather than actual hurdles. And you have to manipulate the distance between the hurdles to develop this fast 3-stride rhythm. So if you have a young athlete, you'll have to have a very small distance between the hurdles to develop the 3-stride hurdling. Now, one other thing you will want to do with younger athletes is teach them to hurdle on both legs. So the right and the left leg. So that if they, it's good for equilibrium and, again, coordination. But also, if the athletes go on to do the 400-meter hurdles, they will have then learnt the skills of hurdling off both legs when they are young. So, yeah, hurdle off both legs. And I would say, yeah, young hurdlers can hurdle, but it might not be anything that resembles formal races at the young age. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think a lot of coaches will face a situation that you don't have actual hurdles available for your training sessions. But as James mentioned, hurdling in my eyes is like sprinting over barriers, and you can use small boxes. I mean, whatever you find. I've been working with a couple. Yeah.
Sorry, Vol. One of the things that I've used with very young athletes is rather than hurdles, I've just used mats. So like little gym mats and stuff like that, because it's not necessarily about the jumping that's important. It's about the hurdle stride that is important. So you can just use mats, or you could use little canes on the floor or something like that. You just have to be creative and see what you can find. So don't worry too much about the jumping of the hurdle or the clearance, but remember, it's the hurdle stride you're trying to develop, the 3-stride rhythm, the takeoff and the runoff. They're the key things you're going to be focusing on.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe according to this, how long do you believe it takes to develop a decent hurdler?
I mean, it depends. I mean, it depends how you define decent. It does take a long time. I mean, I would say, with a couple of my guys now, they're sort of kind of at their peak, and I've been working with them for, near on 7-8 years. It's taken that long to get them to a level. So, the earlier you can teach them the main skills of hurdling, the better. So I would start them young. Like I say, they don't have to be racing hurdles, but they can be training for the hurdles, because it will still help with other events. But you have to be patient, and you just have to keep improving every single session. Try and get better. Try and do everything a little bit better, one step at a time.
Yeah, get better every day. I think that's pretty much in line with what we've mentioned yesterday. We have a couple of questions regarding the 400-meter. Would you mind elaborating a bit more on the speed reserve?
For 400-meter hurdling?
Yes, please.
So, I mean, speed reserve, the idea behind speed reserve is the faster that you are on the flat, the less percentage-wise intensity you have to run at certain periods in the race. So, for example, let's just talk about the flat 400 very quickly. So, if your personal best is 22 seconds for 200 meters, then if you go through the 200 meters in a 400 in 22.5, your speed reserve is effectively 0.5. So it's going to be very, very hard to finish that race well. Whereas if your personal best for the 100 meters is 21.0 and you go through in 22.5, your speed reserve is 1.5 seconds. So you have a lot more energy, if you like, in the tank, or energy in the bag. for the second half of the race. So this is why speed is very important. And even when you're working with hurdlers, you still must develop speed. The faster the athletes are, the more speed reserve they have, and the easier it is for the athletes on a speed reserve basis to hit certain points in the race in certain times. In a 400-meter hurdles, remember, the most important hurdles are 8, 9, and 10. If you make a mess of hurdle 8, 9, and 10, you will lose lots of time because the body is tired at that point, and you will lose more momentum at the end of a race than at the start of the race. In 400-meter hurdling, the best hurdle to make a mess of is number 1. In sprint hurdles, the worst hurdle to make a mess of is number 1. So that's where the difference in the two events, lies. So speed reserve, hopefully in the 400 hurdles, allows you to finish the race strongly in the last 3 hurdles in particular.
And in addition, I feel that we've discussed this earlier already, that in India we are facing a situation that there's probably too much lactic acid training done. And personally, I feel that's also related to the technique or the action on the last 3 hurdles. What kind of endurance training you think is necessary for a 400-meter hurdler?
So I would do this. So if I'm working with a 400-meter hurdler, I reverse engineer the race. So I work on the back of the race first. I work on hurdle 8, 9, 10 first. So I will do multiple runs over 8, 9, and 10 with short recovery. So something like a run from, you start at maybe hurdle 5 or the 200-meter mark. You run around the top bend and you run hurdle 8, 9, 10 at race pace. Okay? Finish the run, walk back across the grass and do it again and just see how many you can do. And that might be a good specific endurance session. And then through the year, what you then do is you start adding more hurdles in. So then you put hurdle 7 in, hurdle 6 in, hurdle 5 in, and you learn how to run the top bend. What most 400 hurdles coaches do is they work the first 5 hurdles over and over and over again. And they don't work the top bend and the end of the race. The first 5 hurdles are really, really easy because remember, the athlete is always fresh at this point. The athlete is full of energy at this point. So you only need to work the front end of the race when the athlete is in specific fitness close to the season. Because if you start working on the first half of the race in general preparation, the rhythms will be different at that part of the season because the athlete is not in race shape. You must always in training think about the race. We train to race. We don't train to train. So the training has to be very specific. So why are you doing endurance training for the sake of doing endurance training? It's pointless. You do endurance training to make you better at enduring something in the race, enduring speed in the race. So everything must come back to the race. So that's what I would do. I would build the race back to front. I work at the end and then work at the start towards the season. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I think especially for the senior performance athletes, the training becomes more specific. But maybe for developing 400-meter hurdler, I mean, from my perspective, you also have to develop a basic endurance level, especially with regards to the lactate threshold, for example. Do you agree, or?
Yeah, you do, and you can just, you can obviously develop basic cardiovascular fitness at the start of the training year, which of course, then effectively, yes, of course you are training to be able to handle training. That's effectively why you develop that sort of cardiovascular fitness at the start of the year, and you can do heart rate things or interval training. It's a very good way of developing good cardiovascular fitness. So yeah, having an endurance base is incredibly important. Absolutely. But what is very important is specific rhythms of the race. So you must start to teach the athletes rhythms of the race. Now you can do that in many ways. You can put all 10 hurdles out and you can get the athletes just running over 10 hurdles and get them used to that. Or what you can do is you can basically calculate, and I can share this with coaches. I have all the formulas for this. You can basically, based on what stride pattern the athlete is doing, you can then do 6 stride or 8 stride or 7 stride runs on the straight over 5 or 6 hurdles, for example. So you're teaching the athlete the correct rhythms that they will be using in the race. And that is a really, really important thing to develop. I always want to get 2 things for my, at least 2 things from my training. So if I can develop general fitness, general endurance, whatever it might be, and I can teach the athletes some rhythm stuff or something related to the event as well, then fantastic. I'm getting more bang for my buck, as we say. I'm getting more of a return on my investment. So I would always urge you when you're doing training to say, okay, this is my primary focus. What is my secondary focus? Principally, I want to get this out of this session, but what also can I get out of this session? And then you really, really maximize, what you're doing with the athletes, because otherwise what you're doing is you're just making the athletes tired. That's all you're doing.
Yes, definitely, 100%. We have another question here, whether it is important to be able to clear the hurdles with both legs in the 400 meters.
Yes, it is. It is obviously very important. However, there's some athletes that will hurdle on the same leg all the way around. In fact, the best athlete in the world at the moment, Karsten Warholm, he just hurdles on one leg all the way around. But yes, I would urge all coaches to develop the athletes to hurdle on both legs from a young age. Now, a little trick here is if the athlete is, let's say the athlete is dominant with a left leg lead, and you're teaching them how to hurdle on the right leg. And you're doing, for example, 4 stride or 6 stride work over the hurdles. If you have an even number, it means that you're alternating the leg. So you'll go from left to right to left to right. If the athlete is dominant on the left leg, make sure that the first hurdle they take is always the other leg, the weaker leg, the right leg. Because it's a lot easier hurdling on your weaker leg, or your least preferred leg, if you like, once you've already established a rhythm. It's very hard for the athletes to sight a hurdle with their less dominant leg. So get them to hurdle on the less dominant leg for the first hurdle. It's a really nice trick. And that's a bit of a shortcut to teach the athletes to hurdle on the other leg very, very quickly, because it starts confusing the mind as to which is the best leg. So yes, hurdle on both legs and get them to always start on the weaker leg. Or if they're doing drills, 3-stride drills, right, left leg, always get them to start on the weaker side first, then do the strong side.
Okay, thank you. Maybe moving to the short hurdles. What happens if an athlete, especially like young girls, for example, are facing difficulties in clearing the distance with 3 steps in between? What are you going to do?
Yeah, it's a real common problem. Now you have choices. In a competition, what you can do is you can make a long step off the hurdle. Okay, so the trail leg, rather than pushing away, you extend the trail leg out, and you can gain some distance doing that. Now, the problem with that is you are potentially ingraining bad habit. So we need to look at this case by case. So if you have, for example, we have a under 16 female athlete who's doing 100-meter hurdles, and she's quite short, and she's not particularly developed, she's not particularly strong, and she can't quite get the 3 strides in. She can do it if she overstrides. The problem is you can let her compete, but you are ingraining bad habits. So my preference would be to say to that girl, okay, you're not going to compete at hurdles until you are strong enough to do a fast 3-stride rhythm. And then what you would do is you would just train for a fast 3-stride rhythm at a distance that is optimal for that athlete. So you might bring the hurdles in 4 pigeon steps. So hurdle 1 would be on the mark. Hurdle 2 would be in 4 pigeon steps. Hurdle 3 would be in 8 pigeon steps. Hurdle 4 would be in 12. So what you've done is you've shortened the distance between the barriers. And then that allows the athlete to do a fast 3-stride rhythm. The problem you have in India is the events don't necessarily suit all of the athletes. And in the UK, you have the opposite problem, because under 16, we have 80 hurdles and then 75 hurdles. And sometimes the gaps are too small. So you have the opposite problem. So what I say to those athletes is sometimes you maybe just have an under 16, maybe go and compete in the long jump and the 200 and the high jump instead. But train for hurdles. Train fast 3-stride rhythm. Train the takeoff. Train the runoff. So when they are strong enough, maybe when they get to under 18 or maybe a second year under 16, they can then go and race the hurdles, because you don't want to create bad habits when they're young just for the sake of competing in that event and under 16. And the reality is this, guys, nobody remembers the best under 16s. They are very quickly forgotten. People remember the best seniors. So your goal is to get your athletes to improve and to get them into the juniors and the seniors. That's what you're trying to do. So you want to have a long-term plan with your athletes. Okay, does that make sense?
Completely. And I'm really glad that you mentioned it, because we have good news for the coaches as well. AFI just decided to adjust the height as well as the distances for the under 16 hurdlers, girls as well as boys. So to make it more efficient, to enable them to have this quick 3-stride rhythm rather than extending their legs, because that's, I think, developing our athletes in the opposite direction. Yeah, so from this season onwards, yeah, we will even have 7 flights for the boys and 8 for the girls, according to this shorter distance. So I really believe it will help us on the long-term development.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. That's really good news, and very good, very good.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. James, you mentioned a few times that there are certain similarities between the 100-meter or 110-meter hurdles and the dash sprint. You were talking about the inner thigh angle, for example, during the touchdown of the support leg. Are there any other similarities regarding the mechanics between the dash sprint and the hurdles?
Yeah, I mean, there always is. I guess what happens, the 3-stride rhythm that happens in between the hurdling, it isn't really sprinting, it's something else. I mean, some people have termed it modified sprinting. I don't like that term, and I'm not quite sure why, but I just don't. I think it's things like, the reactive strength that's really, really important. And I think that's something, I like to teach people to sprint in a reactive way. So being very, very quick ground contacts, developing forces efficiently through the tendons rather than through the muscles. I think it was you, Volker, were talking about the old sprinters of old used to be very big and bulky, and now they're not quite so big because they're learning actually to produce forces a bit more efficiently. And I definitely buy into that. And I think as an overriding concept, we need to be efficient. And if an athlete is, not finishing a race well, whether it be a 100-meter flat or 110-meter hurdles or 100 hurdles, what is it? Is it a speed endurance issue, which it might be? or is it an efficiency issue? Which it more often than not is an efficiency issue actually. What actually is it? So, yeah, I think in answer to your question, that there's always similarities. I think just as a sort of guiding light, I think, we all need to be thinking of producing forces reactively. And I think we need to make our athletes more efficient. My early observations here in India, I might be completely wrong, is that a lot of athletes are inefficient. They're trying hard, they're strong, they're very well developed in the gym and stuff like this, and it's not necessarily specific strength. It's very good general strength, but not necessarily specific strength. And I think we need to probably address this and just be a bit more efficient in actually everything that we do. So I might be wrong on that, but that's just my early observations here.
Yeah, I think you're right. We mentioned that the physical aspects here are often outshining the technical aspects, and that's definitely something we have to work on within the next years. Okay, I think we have to conclude this session because the next sports federation is already waiting. James, I thank you very much on behalf of AFI and the Indian coaches. Coaches, I thank you for your keen interest. I think that has been a great session. And what just came to my mind, maybe we can even one day conduct like a short hurdle clinic or so. Maybe we'll invite James and the coaches, and maybe even some of your athletes are able to join for a weekend or so in Odisha or wherever. Because again, the hurdling events definitely offer a huge chance for us to win some medals, not only in the SAF games, but also on an Asian level and maybe on the long term on an international level too. Yeah, James, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking your Saturday morning off for supporting us with your lectures. I found it really fruitful, a lot of inspiring ideas. And personally, I'm looking forward to the next years working with you. And we keep in touch. Coaches, if you have any more questions, feel free to write us an email to education@indianathletics.in. And I will pass back the mic to Mr. Radhakrishnan. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. Get some rest. And we see each other on Monday morning. James, thanks a lot to you as well. And all the best to your family.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Walker. Thank you, Walker. Once again, I thanks Mr. James on behalf of Sports Authority of India and Athletic Federation. It was an excellent session and delivered a lot of good knowledge about hurdling and hurdling technique. Thank you so much. And now I request Mr. Bahadur Singh, Chief Coach, who is here with us, to just give a feedback of these coaches education sessions.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You're getting my voice?
Yes, sir.
Even today's, good morning to everyone. Even today's lecture, really it is fantastic. Right from hurdle, so detailed approach to hurdle, take off on the hurdle, and landing between the hurdles. I think it is very much impressive and very much in detail. So even yesterday lecture also on nutrition, I think every lecture is very much useful for our all listeners. So really I thank everyone, all the lecturers who have done a wonderful job, and they are very useful lectures they are delivering. The most important thing in coaches education, I must appreciate or thank our especially Athletics Federation of India, our chairman, Dr. Binod, our president, Dr. Smariwala, the great support and efforts by Sports Authority of India, especially Raj Singh Bishnoi, our executive director, and DG Sai. Especially I tell you, by how we got the 20 medals in Asian Games. This is the great support from Government of India, Sai, as well as athletics planning. So I really appreciate. This is, I have a very long association with the Indian system. And this time, I really am so happy that federations, National Federation, Sports of India and government, they have a very good coordination, and I hope we will get a lot of medals in the coming Olympics as well as Asian Games will be much more, not only 20, maybe more than 30. So now my suggestion to our coaches who are attending this course, please must write down everything what you listen such a detailed lecture, and especially when you work, you must work with every athlete, and every athlete you must know each thing of the athlete, every detail of the athlete. You must know what type of training he was doing before coming to with you, and what is his problem, and every work session you please must give some feedback before the workout to what you are going to do today. So mentally preparation for the athlete is very important. The other things, my suggestion to Radha Saab, we should also start grade IAAF level 1 course and 2 on this type of video conference, because our problem is not small. India is such a big country and we have more than 500 districts. So every district we should have 20 athletes 20 coaches who should get a knowledge. So by this video conference, we can deliver them a lecture level 1, level 2. For even 1,000 people will be involved like this. Even you get the question of idea permission, or that will be later on. If you want to give certificate, that can be no need. At present, knowledge is more important. This is my suggestion. And talk all the state units. Every district they should participate. 10 to 15 people. They should learn what is athletics, what is level 1, what is level 2. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. And I hope good luck for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, I request Mr. Kamal Ali Khan. Is he available here?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, now I am making you as host,
Okay,
and
sir.
we will be having a program of this coaches education development program online on Monday at 10 a.m. Thank you
Okay, sir.
all. Thank you for participation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request to all my respect your name.